friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here with another video in the series 30 Reviews in 30 Days. Today we're talking about The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. This is historical fiction. The novel is set in the hills of rural Kentucky and we're following the lives of a few women. The number fluctuates during the novel, but we're following the lives of a few women who work as pack horse librarians. Apparently during 1930s, 1940s, they had this system where women on horses would go into the hills, into the mountains to deliver library books to families and go back and pick them up so that people could get access to free material to read, to learn. We'll talk about that. But yeah, people could get access to library materials, even people who didn't want to leave their house or couldn't leave their house for one reason or another. This book is a wonderfully heart-wrenching but also heartwarming read. I loved it. I have read several books by Jojo Moyes, and after her novel, Me Before You, I read another book where there was also a very sad ending. And I struggled to think, with the richness of Jojo Moyes' writings, can she write a happy ending? And I don't want to give away the ending of this one, but it's not the tearjerker that it could have been. So I'm going to highly recommend that you check out The Giver of Stars. If you're interested in historical fiction, if you like books that tell a story, but also show up the characters and build up the characters so that you feel like you love them, then maybe you want to check out this one. I apologize for the mess behind me, but this is what I imagine the library looked like when they were getting a lot of books in and they were sending a lot of books out, and they didn't always have time to shelf and they didn't always have time to organize. But when you looked in the space, you knew that this was a place that was dedicated to the love of reading and the joy of reading and the potential that reading can offer. So the main character of The Giver of Stars is an English woman named Alice who married her husband in England and followed him to Kentucky on the expectation that she was escaping life with her family that wasn't fulfilling to her and that she would find herself in Kentucky. And she does, but she doesn't find herself happy in that marriage. And the story does reflect what happens in her relationship. But because it's told from her perspective, for the most part, we see her friendship with the other women that she meets because she gets involved as one of these librarians, and how she develops her relationship and how she learns about these women. There's Marjorie, who is a no-nonsense woman, and Izzy, who had polio, I think, as a child and has a disability, and a young woman who's growing up in a home where she is the feminine voice, even though she is as far from feminine as it's possible to be, I suppose. So I love the elements of this book. It does talk a little bit about the Christian principles that people in this time seemed to want to order their lives by, where they wanted to make sure that children were born in legitimate relationships. They used the B word to talk about children who were born out of wedlock. There's a lot of suppressing women's voice and women's identity because of the social construct that could be parlayed from Christian principles but isn't necessarily. So there's that. There's discussion about racial differences and racial treatment, because while most of the women are white, there is a black woman who appears in the novel, she and her brother. There is also talk about the commercialization of the rural landscape, that the rich people in the town are the people who own the mines, and what life is like for the miners, and you know, some of what happens to the families as the terrible things that could happen in mines happen. So those elements are included in the book, but it's not just about that. It's also about the friendship between these women and what they're willing to do for each other, as they grow. So one of the things that I really loved about this book, let's talk first about one of the criticisms, that because it is a book about librarians and about people going out of their way to offer books and the chance to read to other people, that you may think that this book should have more bookish content. Like maybe they should talk more about books that we know, classics, the books from the canon, right? You feel like maybe there should be more of that in there. But she does incorporate, Jojo Moyes, the author, she does incorporate some bookish talk. It might not be the extent that you may be looking for, but it is relevant. Every time she places a book, a title, a quote, it's relevant to the story and the development of the plot. So I love that it wasn't just a list of books that people should be reading, but it was what these books actually offer the individuals as they are living out their lives in the plot of the story. So I love that. But what I really loved about the book, about the bookish content of this one, is that this story shows what books offer us. In this novel, books were used as protection. Books were used to bridge conversations, to open up dialogue. They were used, quotes were used to give comfort and books were used as weapons. I mentioned that. But also you saw how people who weren't leaving home and didn't send their children to school were welcoming picture books and primer reading, early childhood, early reading material into their homes, so that children were teaching themselves how to read and how to read better. And is there any better gift that a book could give you than the ability to read more books? And so I love that. I love this book. There are some romances that are developing on the pages as some relationships are ending, others are starting. And I love that devolution/evolution of life, relationships. And it's just great. The women at the start of this novel are all bogged down at the beginning. They're all bogged down by tradition and the patriarchy and the general feeling that women should be decorations, women should be ornaments in their house. They are not they don't have a voice outside of the voice of their father or their husband. And here we have women who become as outspoken in their lives as they have felt inside forever. And we get to see them awakening in some respects, awakening to the joy of freedom of expression. And we see the cost, the consequences of being contrary to what, the popular notion is. But we get to see the beautiful development and growth of friendship between women, what women look like when they're supporting each other, and what women do when they are learning to just elevate themselves and be their own person. And it's just beautiful. It's a wonderful read. There is some controversy that surrounds this book, The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes, because the plot resembles the plot of another book that is also set in Kentucky, that also follows these packhorse librarians. And I haven't read that other book, but I do want to acknowledge that the controversy does exist because some people say the books are too similar. But when you have historical fiction, books that are based on real events, like how much do we expect authors or novelists to veer from that story in order to write their own novels? I don't know. I haven't read the other book. I probably won't. Maybe I will at some point. But for now, I haven't read the book. I read this one, The Giver of Stars, and I really enjoyed it. Will highly recommend it. If you like books, if you like books about books, if you like books about women, if you like books about friendship, if you like books about people just growing into themselves and becoming the best version of themselves and departing from societal norms to just do what's right for themselves and for the rest of the world, then yes, you will enjoy this book as well. So The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes is today's review. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let's chat in the comments. Would love to hear from you. If you've read any of Jojo Moyes' novels, if you've read this one, if you've heard about the controversy, or maybe you read the other book that it's supposed to be similar to, let's chat down there. And until next time, happy reading. Bye.